Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Please, as you see on the screen, drop it in the chat. We have a question here for everyone to just get the juices flowing and start the conversation. But wanted to welcome everyone to our webinar today. Our webinar is called Let's Get Loud, Leveling Up Your Fundraising Communications in 2024. And before we dive in, I have a couple of housekeeping items and want to start with just a little bit about Alfred Group. So many of you are very familiar with who we are and what we do. Alfred Group is a national full-service consultancy serving the nonprofit community. We offer 6 flagship services listed here on the screen: all things fundraising, strategic planning, leadership development, interim staffing, all things data, and diversity, equity, and inclusion services. We're a member and sponsor of AFP, the Association of Fundraising Professionals. We are a certified women's business enterprise and a member of the Giving Institute, and where our president and CEO, Brenda Sari, is the current chair of the Giving Institute. We at Alfred Group, our vision is a world where possibilities are endless and reflect the best of who we are as humans. And so you can find more information about us, our vision, our mission, what we do at alfred.com. I do want to take a moment to acknowledge the land on which we reside. You all are phoning in from all over the country, but wanted to take a moment to acknowledge Chicago, Illinois, which is where Alfred Group's headquarters is. Chicago is located on the traditional unceded homelands of the councils of the 3 fires, the Ojibwe, Ottawa, and Potawatomi nations. Many other tribes, such as the Miami, Ho-Chunk, Menominee, Sac, and Fox, also call to this area home. The region has long been a center for Indigenous people to gather, trade, and maintain kinship ties. A few housekeeping items, webinar logistics, before I turn things over to our moderator for today. This session is being recorded, and the recording, as well as some of the resources we're going to be talking about today, are going to be available to you immediately following the webinar. You'll receive an email from us within the next 24 hours with links to all of these resources. I want to mention the survey. After we conclude here today, you'll be prompted to fill out a really short survey. It's 4 questions. It's really, really short and simple, and we really appreciate your feedback. Today's session is approved for 1 CFRE credit. So for anyone seeking certification or recertification for your CFRE credentials, this is approved for 1 credit. Everyone is in listen-only mode for the duration of the webinar. However, the chat is open, so we definitely encourage you to let us know who you are, where you're from, what your organization is, and to leave any reactions, thoughts, or commentary in the chat as we go through the webinar today. However, if you have a question for the panelists in particular, if you could please, instead of using the chat, use the Q&A icon that's also in your navigation bar, and that's where you can type in your questions, and those will go directly to the panelists. We'll be monitoring those throughout, and we will leave time at the end for a Q&A to answer as many as we possibly can. And then finally, please join us on social media. We hope to continue the conversation there, and you can find us using the handle @the_Alfred Group. So without further ado, I want to turn things over to our moderator for today, Lieve Hendren. Lieve is a senior consultant and the director of strategic initiatives with Alfred Group. So I'm going to turn it over to you. Thanks, Lieve.
Thank you so much, Lucinda and team. And thank you, everyone, our panelists, everyone who's joining us today. We are so honored and excited to spend Valentine's Day here with you, learning how we can share more love with our donors, and also want to celebrate with anyone who's enjoying the Lunar New Year or having Ash Wednesday. If there's other celebrations, feel free to put them into the chat so we can celebrate with you. We're so grateful that you're here. My name is Lieve. Lieve rhymes with diva, Hendren. My pronouns are she, hers. Behind me, I have a blurred background on a beige wall, and I have curly hair. And part of why we were so inspired to create this panel is that at Alfred Group, we use strength-based messaging. That's something I love, working with our clients, a framework to get effective, compelling, visionary communications that support great fundraising. So naturally, we are so curious about how we can learn and improve what's going on in the sector. And I can't wait to introduce our panelists with you today. They're an amazing group. Part of what inspired us to create this panel is that there's just an overwhelming number of trends and strategies when it comes to fundraising communications today. Data-driven decision-making, there's automation opportunities, different visual pieces. We're hearing already in the chat questions about Chat GPT and the changing narrative. And last year, the number of AI tool users was reported at just over 250 million. That number is expected to triple to over 700 million in the next 6 years. At the same time, Microsoft reported that the average office worker spends nearly 60% of their work week communicating via emails, meetings, and chats. So even if you're not a 100% communications professional, learning effective tools and techniques is going to be really beneficial. And we want to know, how can we match this expectations for nonprofits to stay ahead of the curve in a practical way? So before we start the panel, we're curious to hear, if you haven't already popped into the chat, share a little bit about what communication trend or strategy is most top of mind for you. That will help shape our conversation today. We're seeing quality communications in between asks and events, maintaining donor trust when using AI tools, very topical, and how do we shift our narratives to best adapt to different platforms. So thank you so much for participating. We're excited to have this as participatory. And with that, I'm thrilled to let our panelists introduce themselves, beginning with Nathan Chappell.
Great. Thanks so much, Lieve. It's great to be here. I am Nathan Chappell, he, him, his, and I am sitting here in Southern California, where it's pretty sunny today. And behind me is a silhouette of my self-promotion of my book that I wrote in December or November of, I don't know, whatever 2 years ago was. It's just a blur, called The Generosity Crisis. I have much less hair than Lieve. I wish I had more curly hair, but I have increasingly less amount of hair. I am just thrilled to be here today among this great panel and looking forward to an incredible conversation, even based on the comments in the chat. I know this is going to be a great time together.
Thank you, Nathan. Rob?
Yeah, hi, everybody. My name is Rob Leighton, he, him, his. I'm the executive director and founder of the iMission Institute. We started 11, 12 years ago, kind of with the proposition that nonprofits are doing a really good job at buying technology, and that the ability to use those tools well for marketing and for program management as well, for measuring impact, there needed to be support in terms of how to use tools well. I'm coming to you today from Net Inclusion. It's 1,300 people coming together, talking about how do we create a more inclusive and diverse digital world. Incredible energy, really exciting. So I'm taking a break from that energy to join you, and really, really excited to be here today.
Thank you so much, Rob. And Felicity.
Hi, my name is Felicity Tao. Thank you, Lieve and the Alpha Group, for inviting me to be on this panel. Great to be here with everyone. I am Senior Vice President, Marketing and Communications at Greater Cincinnati Foundation. GCF is one of the top 35 community foundations in terms of assets under management among 900 also community foundations in the country. I joined GCF 2.5 years ago. Before that, I worked for Ultra Fiber, formerly known as Cincinnati Bell, for 12 years. My last role at Ultra Fiber was Senior Brand Strategist, managing the corporation's 4 brands, including Cincinnati Bell, Hawaii Telecom, Cincinnati Bell Technology Solutions, CBTS, and Onyx Enterprise Solutions in Canada. In that role, I was responsible for the brand's messaging and content strategies, digital programs, and creative services. Really excited to talk to my fellow communications leads in the fundraising industry about how we can up our game of fundraising communications in 2024.
Thank you so much. And it's been wonderful to see some introductions in the chat as well. We have folks from Washington, New York, everywhere in between. So this promises to be a great conversation. And don't hesitate if you have questions to share them, as Lucinda said earlier. So with that, we'd love to start with this opening question that's on everyone's minds. What key trends do you see shaping fundraising communications in 2024? And are there emerging technologies nonprofits should be aware of? And it looks like the poll just went up, but we don't need the poll quite yet. Felicity?
Sure. I think there are lots of distractions out there right now. History suggests that the presidential election typically impacts philanthropy and community foundations negatively. In today's social and political environments, understanding the role of community foundations in bringing people together is very important. So I actually want to share a piece of data point. So Walton Family Foundation just conducted a collaboration and change survey, and the result came back to say Americans, the majority of Americans across all age groups believe that mission-driven foundations and philanthropic organizations provide a way for people to work together. Majority of Americans across all age groups. So I feel like in today's social and political environments, projecting a unity message in an asset-based frame and helping people see our common humanity will be super important. For community foundations, I think it can be also a simple reminder that no matter who is the president or which party is in power, we are always here to take care of our neighbors and community as usual. So we are here for good.
That's very inspiring. Thank you so much, Felicity, and a great reminder about why we're all here and the impact of our work. Rob, do you have any thoughts about top fundraising trends?
Yeah, I mean, we all have a ton of them, right? But I think the important thing to always start with is that fundraising is marketing to donors, right? That's kind of the core principle. And we can spend lots and lots of time talking about this app and that app and this tactic and this and another strategy. But I think the tried and true principles around marketing, selling, customer relations still apply. So, I mean, I think for us, the core principle is to think about, do you have those core strategies in place? Do you have the core workflows in place? Are you working hard and working successfully? That said, there's this idea of personalization, that we can personalize our communications at scale. And this idea of marketing automation that lets us capture a lot of information, bring in a lot of data, use things like AI to inform how we communicate and connect, but not losing sight of that, that this is still humanity that we are working with, I think is the important point. So start with the basics, make sure you have that down. Think about the idea of personalization, not just segments anymore, but the trend is increasingly towards a segment of one. And then I think how you use data and things like AI in more and more effective ways to do that well.
Thank you so much, Rob. And we know that you've gotten great results and growth with many of your clients, but specifically the Community Foundation of Greater New Haven. I'm just curious if you can share a little bit of a case study in terms of how you used that personalization. So digital trends created that more personalized approach and relational strategy.
Yeah, so and there is a document that can be shared, marketing automation document that speaks to strategy behind what we did with the Community Foundation. But to give you a perspective is you have to, in the work we do, we have to reach out to lots and lots of people, connect with them in some way, and then move them to action. Moving them to action is increasingly where the personalization happens. So with the work with the Community Foundation of Greater New Haven, it's understanding that one, as community foundations, there's tremendous competition for dollars, right? So understanding that we live in a competitive world, we do want to get loud, but we don't want to make noise. Important point, take that one away. We want to get loud, but we don't want to make noise. It's a very noisy world out there. You have to get your message heard, right? And for the community foundations, who are you competing against? You're competing against the Fidelities, the Vanguards, the Schwabs, where moving money is increasingly easy, right? Moving from a 401k or a savings account into those, into their charitable buckets is becoming easier and easier. And so the question is, how do we compete, and how do we get people to the place in our world, in our digital world, in the community foundation's digital world, where we can get our message can be heard. And to give you just a specific example, the use of search on the one hand, that the number of people who actually find for instance, the donor advised fund page on your website, if you just let them try to navigate, for the community foundation in any particular months of Greater New Haven, we're talking tens of people found their way to that page and were able to connect. Through the ability of search marketing, we were able to get a 10-fold increase. So moving from, well, it was more than, it's about a 20-fold increase from about 30 or 40 people to 500-600 people coming to that page from the geography in which we live, with beginning to understand what their interests are. And at the same time, in social media, right? Social media is not people asking questions. Social media is where people come together around common interests. We're able to target different kinds of communities, Latino community, different BIPOC communities, women's communities, and in our social media, target those folks, be able to tag who's coming and begin to understand who they are, so that downstream, further down the funnel, further down in sense of moves management, we can begin to speak to them as people, not just a data point.
Thank you so much, Rob. And I can see how that would be helpful for any nonprofit that is looking to engage a specific geography or a particular group. So really excited about that. Nathan, what's top of mind for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, these are all great comments, and I'll echo a lot of them. You know, my orientation is a bit different in the sense that I spent 20 years leading nonprofit organizations, realizing that things were changing, but our processes weren't, for the most part. And so, you know, really taking a look at what the outside world was doing in artificial intelligence in 2017 ended up really coming to the realization that people didn't give because they were wealthy, people gave because they were connected. And we built an AI algorithm that essentially measured the depth of connection, and then realizing that depth of connection changes every day and every week and every quarter, that no person is static. So that idea of that, you know, Rob was mentioning hyper personalization or N of one type fundraising, which was not possible before AI, now becomes entirely possible, that you can look and measure that connection as that N of one. So for me, you know, I think what keeps me up at night, but also is what I wrote a book about in the generosity crisis, essentially, is if things don't change, the future is fairly clear. We are at an inflection point within our sector, and a pretty significant one, where the percentage of individuals that give to any charity at all are less than 50%. So we're, you know, givers are now the minority, and that trend continues to decrease if we don't do something different. I think it really is echoing both what, you know, Felicity and Rob are touching on, is the world has fundamentally changed. We can't continue to operate in the same way and expect a different result. And what I see as the biggest part of that change is really what we call the competition for connection. The nonprofits are not competing for dollars. They're not competing for discretionary dollars. They're competing for connection in that very loud world where the average person receives 333 emails a day, scrolls 300 feet on a day on their phone, and sees 5,000 to 7,000 brand images a day. So, you know, AI is what got us there. You know, we're just inundated with information. I don't think the answer is more information. The answer is more personalized information. And I think it's a really, you know, not a less is more approach, but a very strategic approach of how to connect with people in that individual way, where we can really maximize that premium of personalization in a way that the private sector has done extremely well for the last number of years. But, you know, tools are available. we have the information at our disposal to do that now at scale. And I think this is honestly kind of a scary time and a lot of change, but an exciting time with new transformative technology that we've never had before.
It's fascinating to hear everyone speaking about the value of personalization, especially in this crowded marketplace. So that's very exciting. We're going to move into our questions, and this is the time for the poll, because we saw earlier a lot of buzz about the elephant in the room, AI, what it is, how it works, and how it's going to impact everyone's future, both personally for workflows and organizationally. So thank you. We just have the poll question in here. Go ahead, hop into the poll. The question is, where is your organization in its journey with AI communications tools? There's a scale here from actively integrating AI into our workflow, all the way down to hesitant to adopt any new tools right now. This will help us and our panelists better understand what's going on. And I'm very curious if any of our panelists have feedback. I love playing around with AI tools, but haven't found too many beyond maybe some of the big ones to be very sticky.
Mm. I'm happy to respond to that, but it's great to look at these results.
Yeah, great. Why don't you respond and then we'll read out the results.
Yeah, we talk about this a lot. I lead an AI team, and so we're definitely in this kind of echo chamber. I woke up this morning, I'm writing an op-ed on, transformative AI and transformative philanthropy, solve the world's greatest issues. I would never at this point consider even going to Google. My orientation around like how I conduct business is shifted, but that took a little while. It really comes down to this, what we consider an AI mindset. And there's a person a friend that I know, Connor Grennan, who does a podcast and is on LinkedIn a lot, has a newsletter on this AI mindset. I think if it's not sticky, it's because you haven't really transitioned your brain into thinking like this is a new way of doing business. You're still kind of fighting that urge to go back to the way things were. But I promise you, for those that they become their primary orientation is using generative AI versus search, just traditional search, it almost doing a Google search for me now is it actually equates more work, because I can get the same result, but it will take me a lot more time to go through 33,000 different search returns. So for me, I think that it's a transition. It's really a change management kind of, on a personal level, of where people will become more familiar with how to leverage AI tools to do and augment and support their work. And when Microsoft fully immerses Copilot into all Microsoft Office suite, AI will just become ubiquitous with work. Like you won't even think about it. It will just be a thing that we do and level up. So I think
we'll all
it's
have to
natural.
figure out how to use
We're all
it.
in it. Yeah, we're all in that kind of middle, kind of in between sizes right now. But definitely we're going to, a new wardrobe where it's just going to be part of what we do.
Well, Nathan, only 5% of our attendees today who responded, thank you so much, everyone. Only 5% are actively integrating AI into workflow. We have 17% who are actively piloting and testing. So probably with that folk right there. 42%, the largest percentage here, are exploring potential AI tools. And I think this is the right place to be for that group. And then we have 36% that are hesitant to adopt any new tools. So we will be talking later, touching upon change management. I love the idea of both personal and organizational change management to get the most from those tools. With that, Nathan, I would love if you could share a little bit more. How has AI transformed digital storytelling for fundraising, and what specific strategies are you finding most effective in engaging donors?
Yeah, I mean, it's such an important question, and honestly, a really exciting question to be confronting right now with the advent of both generative and predictive AI. I think it starts with actually a little bit of an understanding that there are many different forms of AI. And I think that's where people get a little confused and hesitant. And, they just hear words like hallucination and they hear other scary things. And it's like, I don't know what to trust, so I'm just not going to use it. understanding, I was consulting with some very large, like multinational nonprofits, and they're in the same boat. They're probably in that 5% boat too. Like of just like we know it's coming. We have some FOMO because other people are using it. And we're hearing these success stories, but we don't know what we're doing. It starts with that basic understanding that there are kind of two main buckets of AI. So I'll just break this down for 1 second. There's predictive AI, which is not surprising. It predicts things. So it answers questions that, say, nonprofits have been burdened with since Aristotle talked about 2,300 years ago. It's like how much to ask, when to ask, what to ask for in what way. And then there's generative AI, which we're all probably more familiar with, unless you're living under a rock. OpenAI, ChatGPT, Copilot, Bing, Claude, Perplexity, whatever. There's like so many now. Generative AI creates new things. So while predictive AI essentially creates precision and allows you to look at audiences as an N of one, that's not very helpful if you're not taking action. But similarly,
Nathan, there was a quick question in the chat
Oh.
about using N of one, where I think it means personalization. Is that how
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. I spent a lot of time in healthcare philanthropy. And so in clinical trials, I appreciate that. I think Rob said it better. I think he's a segment of one, meaning the same thing. And in healthcare, we actually stole this from healthcare. This idea of precision philanthropy is that there's no such thing as a donor or a prospect, that you have a single person that has a varying degree of connection to you. And in the medical terms, in a clinical trial, N of one means like a cancer therapy that could help one person may hurt another person based on their own DNA. And so N of one or segment of one. And it's interesting because this came up this morning. There is a post on LinkedIn that Carvana created 1.3 million specific commercials. I'll put the link to the LinkedIn post in here. 1.3 million specific personalized commercials for 1.3 million customers individual. So this is not theory anymore, where you can literally take segments, use predictive AI to segment, like, I know you individually based on all this data that we're computing. And with generative AI, I can take it and create something new specifically for you. That for me is terribly exciting. That's kind of like the advent of we've all been waiting for, of both like understanding a person individually and being able to create content that is specific to them. I mean, it's not hard to imagine. I'll put the link in the chat, but it's not hard to imagine how philanthropy could power boost your fundraising strategy if you not only knew where people were in their kind of donor journey, but you're able to serve content to them. So you asked the question more broadly, like, digital storytelling. It's kind of one of those questions that's like everything and nothing at this point. Like there's predictive AI that can help me understand where someone's at. There's generative that can serve like a letter that's specific to that data. But it also reaches into like really exciting things that I see a lot of nonprofits doing, like augmented and virtual reality, where you're transporting Charity Water and Children's Hospital of Philadelphia and some other organizations I've worked with can create experiences where you can immerse people into telling stories where you're almost transporting them to where they're somewhere new. So way beyond just a standard letter, it's looking at storytelling through a lot of different mediums now. And again, we could spend an hour just on this question, so we won't, but all to say, just go ask ChatGPT, what are the ways that I can use, AI for digital storytelling for nonprofit fundraising? And it will give you a really good list and probably some really creative things for you to kind of ponder about, like, oh, how would that apply to my organization? So it's not a far reach to just start doing it.
That's a fun challenge. I think anyone can participate in that. Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, and thank you for that, Nathan. If it's feeling a little bit out of reach at this juncture, I want you guys to think about your data, right? So AI, whether it's what is the data set that AI is drawing on, and we definitely want to be capturing your data in that equation. So what you want to ask yourself is, what data are you capturing around people that inform us that we can create that more personalized journey, right? It's not just that they have given or how many times they've given or the recency of giving. It's what events they have been part of. What events have they been part of in the community? All sorts of different types of activities that they may be part of. And the power here is that, one, you need to make sure you are bringing that data in from a lot of different places. So whether you're using Microsoft or Salesforce as a platform, take your pick, or other database, fine, or the other data lakes we can talk about. But you need to make sure you're bringing in your data and then augmenting it with third-party data, like you have been doing with things like donor search over time. We're just taking that to a different sort of level.
Thank you so much, Rob, right? Because personalization is only as great as our data. And to that end, Nathan, I'm hoping you can help demystify GPT, right? So we've had some people talk about Chat GPT, which uses data in a slightly different way. What is a GPT?
Yeah. So, and it's, gosh, well, I'll try to demystify it, as much as possible, because even the people who created GPT don't really know how GPT really works. But, this area of generative AI, which runs off large language models. So you hear the term LLM, large language model, generative AI, they're all the same thing. Essentially, these models were a breakthrough in AI that came much faster than even the people who are building them thought they would come. So this is why it feels like we've got whiplash of like, oh my gosh, what happened? That even the developers like OpenAI and others that had been working in the space were really kind of caught off guard at how quickly these models learned. They took an old algorithm, a neural network algorithm from like the 1960s, and applied it toward this idea of like, read the entire body of everything that's ever been written since the beginning of mankind, and then essentially take and apply all of that knowledge to a sentence and predict what is the most logical conclusion of that. These models actually learn very, very quickly because it's so much information. Is that essentially large language models at the simplest form are only trying to predict what word comes next most logically based on the context of the question. The simplest way, though, for people to really understand the power of a large language model or generative AI is to use one. And, I will say that the biggest limitation for anyone that has not gotten into this and still thinks that AI is inaccessible is go to, chat. Whatever it is, chat.openai.ai, because it's always just up on my computer. So chat.openai.com or Microsoft Bing or Claude or now Google's Gemini, and just start to use it. And, most people will start to, say like, well, write a poem about my dog, on the moon having a picnic, and it will do a very good job of, coming up with something that's clever. But use it every day and use it like at least one time to say, okay, so like based on, our organization, what would be an interesting way of, thanking people that, is non-traditional is something in nonprofit that I think we do very poorly for the most part. We don't thank people well or creative enough. ChatGPT or large language models is very good at coming up with new and novel ways of doing that. So all it's doing is taking the entire body of knowledge since the beginning of mankind of every written text that it has access to, which is a lot, and then drawing upon all those experiences and all the things that have ever been done, things that we as humans just can't fathom to retain in our brain, and surface those back to you in very practical ways. The biggest thing that people need to know when they're interacting with generative AI is it's not software. It's not like a typical like CRM that if it doesn't do the same thing twice, it's a bug. That ChatGPT, even if I ask the same question twice, it will come up with two different answers. And so you have to think about it as an assistant, or Microsoft, a co-pilot that is someone that is just there to respond to you and to be kind of like on your kind of left arm as you're doing your work. And I promise if people start using it in that way, and from nonprofits that have almost uniformly not enough people and not enough resources to do all the things that they want to do to support their mission, that this is a tool to your earliest statistics of like how much time people spend communicating. If you could save 20% of your day in your communication through generative AI, you will be able to serve your mission that much better. And so it's almost an imperative at this point.
That's a perfect segue into our next question. How do we actually use all of these tools effectively? We know a lot of the nonprofits in the chat specifically, thanks for sharing about your organization, they face budget capacity constraints. Of course, we're always under pressure to keep our cost ratios really good. So Felicity, we want to hear from you. How can nonprofits really maximize the impact of a smaller communications team?
Sure. So I will start with the cliche, hire the right people who are a great fit for your mission. So the truth is, it's been a competitive hiring market for a few years now, and nonprofits tend to have a higher turnover than other sectors. But I believe we could leverage our mission and purpose-driven work to attract like-minded people who are passionate about and effective for your mission. If we believe in our mission, we should be able to find passion-driven, socially community-minded professionals who work for maybe more than a paycheck. And I would say that we need to be creative in building redundancy in our team structure and operations model. So, for example, when I joined GCF 2.5 years ago, I analyzed our business needs and the strategic importance of those needs, restructured our marketing team, and created a hybrid model that has kind of on-demand capacity to handle workload fluctuation caused by turnover, personal needs, or shift of priorities. So we partner with some really effective agency partners for creative services, for example, communications needs or digital needs, and so on and so forth, and while building the core competency on the team in-house as well. And another thing that, we are talking about technology, so it's really important to leverage digital automation, project management tools to streamline the processes and make collaboration more efficient and effective across the organization. So for example, we use Tableau to create leadership-ready reporting and dashboards using data from multiple systems in-house. We use Trello and SharePoint to manage projects involving internal and external partners. And we also use a digital agency that has a custom tool to create a dashboard for data from a variety of sources for our digital platforms, including Google Analytics, social media, HubSpot, and so on and so forth. And also, because digital is so important, we develop talent and update the marketing team skills to do marketing communications in the digital world. The first thing I did, again, was to develop a comprehensive digital program and train a dedicated digital specialist, and also have the team cross-trained for the digital function.
Can I ask Felicity a question on that? Because I get this a lot where people, it sounds like you have just a very progressive orientation around including digital in all its aspects, like an appetite for that. Was that always the case within your organization? Was that you bringing it to your organization, or was it a kind of an ongoing kind of progression?
No, actually, that's a great question. So before I joined GCF, they were doing digital here and there, but there was no holistic strategy or a program that touches all those digital platforms. That was actually the first thing I introduced to the organization, a comprehensive digital strategy. And multiple digital platforms that we will leverage to accomplish our mission. So I had a digital background working for Alta Fiber and other for-profit companies in the past. So digital was what I was very familiar with. So that's sort of the first thing I did with GCF.
Oh, awesome.
What I find so inspiring about your leadership, Felicity, is how you're cutting through all the multitude of options by going back to your nonprofit strategic objectives. You started this about talking about business objectives and working backwards really strategically to prioritize and cut through the noise, and then also fill in those skill gaps accordingly, which is really inspiring.
And can I add another point, which is the decision of having a comprehensive digital program is not created out of, pure air. Or we actually did a survey with our donors and professional advisors and the community partners in terms of tools they prefer to use in terms of communication. So it is based on the needs. It's not like because Felicity did digital before, that's why we need to adopt the digital tools. But I was a little surprised because when you think about the donor demographics, a lot of our colleagues would think that they are older, they are 65 and above, and that's at least like the demographics we are dealing with at Greater Cincinnati Foundation. And the people would assume that these people still want to have a piece of paper in hand to communicate with people. Like they are more familiar with the print materials and mailers and things like that. But to our surprise, 95% of our donors told us that they prefer to be communicated with via email. So that's like that kind of validated how important the digital tools are to us, as fundraisers.
I might, in terms of making one's life simpler, I might add that often less is more. That nonprofits have a tendency to create lots and lots and lots of content. And it's good content, but it's never really tested as to what is resonating with whom. And so we use marketing is not just about creating good content. It's about making sure the right people are seeing that content at the right time. So make less, reuse it over and over and over again. See what kind of reactions you're getting to that content, to that message. If it's not resonating, improve it. If it's resonating but not as much as you want, improve it. So it's think about your reach, impressions, the eyeballs, and using the power of the digital world is that we get real data in real time. And back in the day when we were doing marketing, they were expensive marketing tests. Most nonprofits couldn't touch that, except for the bigger ones. Now we all can see that data. Simple things like sending out email communications and not just worrying about the open rate and the click-through rate, but who is opening, what are they clicking through, and is that data finding its way into your CRM? I mean, that's, and what's resonating? And that becomes a question of how do you get more eyeballs? It's not just posting in social. There's a lot of organizations that spend a lot of time making social posts. And sadly, very few people are seeing those posts. Boosting those posts, not just to your community, but to targeted audiences, really important. And again, tracking how those audiences are engaging and engaging from a perspective of are they sharing, are they commenting, are they liking, all different levels of engagement. As Nathan was talking about, how do we measure the density of connection, right? So less is more, spend some more time making sure you're getting eyeballs.
Thank you so much.
If I may, Lieve, I will say the beauty of digital tools is measurements is easier, much easier. You can monitor the performance real time almost. Use email communication as an example. Using HubSpot, you're able to know who is clicking, who's opening, like down to names and email contacts. And, we can easily create follow-ups based on that intelligence. So measurement is always a part of what we do with digital tools, and the digital tools make it pretty easier to follow up.
What I'm so inspired by right now, your remarks, Rob and Felicity, is it's almost using the time-tested principle of listening, but applying that to a digital space, right? Instead of always being talking, 80% of content talking, and then 20% maybe in the comments, really listening to figure out where are our donors, how can we engage them where they are, and hear their digital feedback, but through their data. So my next question, Felicity,
Lieve, I just got to say that was beautiful. The whole marketing is listening, I think, is really, I love it.
Marketing is listening. That's a great theme and a surprising theme from a conversation about fundraising tools and AI, how we can listen better. My next question, I'm going to hope that you'll take the lead, Felicity, is continuing on what you were just sharing about how we can use that data we're collecting, that we're using to listen to our donors, and leverage it for personalization in communication strategies that continue to deepen donor relationships without getting too fixated on just putting out content.
Right. We definitely I'll say attempted to, because I don't know if we're 100% effective or successful. But here's the philosophy and aspiration. We definitely adopt a segmented approach in terms of audience segments and channels, leverage of different channels to engage with different segments. In our Salesforce database, we adopted iWave as a tool to understand the propensity, affinity, capacity to give among our donors. And based on our knowledge of donors, including their demographics, charitable giving interest areas, relationship with GCF, whether they have given through with or to GCF, we design a personalized messaging and engagement strategy with each segment. And also using the knowledge in our Salesforce and engagement data from our digital platforms, such as HubSpot and Google Analytics, we try to have meaningful touch points with our audience segments using the right channels. And I often say that, you do not argue with strangers about politics on social media. So that said that we can leverage different channels for different levels of communications. So I think it is important to understand that technology can help us create certain levels of relationships. But at the end of the day, well, no one's data is 100% clean. It always has something to do with an organization's overall data strategy and a practice. Oftentimes there's inconsistency in the practice across the organization. So like for us, GCF is working on improving the validity of our data so that various teams can easily pull accurate data and effectively put it to use. But at the same time, again, you don't want to overcomplicate or wait until the database is perfectly clean. So I will say, understand which channel is most effective for what type of communication, and understanding the limitation of technology, and understand the type of relationship that can be supported but not determined by technology, and understand the end goal is to move the donor relationships offline, maybe into personal communications. I think all these are important. And also, the messaging strategy, leveraging different channels to convey your messaging strategy, convey your mission. I'll say stay connected to your brand promise and the mission of your organization while evolving your messaging strategy based on the social, cultural, and the political environments. So make sure that your brand and messaging strategies need to keep up with the trends while kind of sticking with your fundamental truth and beliefs. Use different channels again to accomplish that ultimate goal is important.
That's a great framing and really wonderful food for thought. I'm going to ask one more question, and then we're going to hop over to some of the questions we've been receiving from our group. But this question is for Nathan. We talked earlier about how do we use that data. Data can be imperfect, and then how do we use AI in a responsible way? If we're adopting this in our organizations, can you share more about responsible AI, Nathan, and what we can do to be a part of that?
Yeah, and thanks for allowing for this question, because it's an area that probably is the single biggest thing that keeps me up at night. Back in 2017, when we started pioneering some new machine learning techniques to essentially measure connection, realized that there was a lot of potential for good with that technology, but also a lot of potential for harm. That essentially, if the nonprofit sector started just using AI to communicate endlessly more, that we would actually turn people further away from charitable giving, instead of doing it, good and really focusing on things that we've just been talking about, personalization. So the idea of responsible AI, which is very loosely regulated in the US, really purposefully, has to be essentially become everyone's responsibility. And so really believe this idea that responsible AI is everyone's responsibility. And I saw there were questions in the chat around like, how do you make sure your CRM is safe or things like that? So there's the corporate side of this. And I kind of equate this to like driving a car, because if we think about like, well, the car manufacturers certainly hold an outsized responsibility to make sure the cars are safe, but what is also your responsibility of a person who drives the car? The government plays a role because they pave the roads and you have to take a driver's license to drive a car, but it's also every person's responsibility of driving that car on those roads to ensure that the car that you have is safe and that you're driving it in a safe way. So with that said, it's not just incumbent that we buy responsibly, and when we developed a questionnaire on how to identify responsible AI, which are things like, is the AI transparent? Is it explainable? Can it be interrogated? Because if we work in the world of trust, we're essentially in the trust business in philanthropy. How do you trust something that can't be explained? And so there are basic questions that you can ask, and I'm happy to share this with anyone or post it on LinkedIn to understand, if I'm buying this tool, is it follow our priority of ensuring that we are prioritizing trust? That at the essence, and that is really where, and I saw that got put in there in the chat, we developed a grassroots effort called Fundraising.ai, which is now 6,000 members strong in 38 countries, of people that are probably in that 5%. Like, we're looking at exploring AI, but we want to do it thoughtfully, and we want to do it where we do no harm. Use it in a way that is going to prioritize and protect trust in the philanthropy sector. We did also create an open source framework for responsible AI. So anyone goes to fundraising.ai can look at that framework for responsible AI. It's been endorsed by 300 different tech platforms and hundreds of individual users as well. There's no commitment. It's all just on the honor system. And you can take it within your organization. And if you don't have a framework for responsible AI, now you do. Use it, adapt it, adopt it, change it however you want. But I think the most important thing is just coming together as individuals that recognize that the nonprofit, philanthropic arena is different. We're not selling Nike, or we're not, selling services. We're essentially exchanging money for trust. And we have to operate in a way that is at a higher level of accountability. And that's really what that intention is. And so hopefully those resources help. In addition, on their website, we hosted a conference last year. We have 54 hours of conversations from 34 amazing individuals talking about different things, from privacy to security to ethics and kind of everything in between.
That's such an amazing resource, Nathan. I think it's a great starting point for change management and bringing the whole organization along, having some really important questions around guidelines. So thank you so much. I see we have a question in the chat that is specific for Rob. And this question is from Julia. Is there a specific time of year that's best to promote to donors that they can give using DAFs, or donor advised funds? I think
you're on
Rob,
mute.
you're on mute.
In terms of DAFs, if that's, year end, when people are tax sensitive, so year end April is when you want to be high intensity in terms of what you're doing in marketing. But recognize that we're talking about a trust product, right? They have to trust. If you're only in marketplace during when you think that person is going to be interested in a DAF, when they have the question, then you're probably not being as effective marketer as you need to be. What you want to be doing is, again, reputation, trust. Reputation, it's made by repetition. So you need to be punching stuff out throughout the year with intensity when you think that people are more likely to be interested in making that purchase. That would be my advice. So you need to stay out there, you need to be communicating, and you need to pulse at certain times of the year, but don't go quiet. So, and you can do that if you start with the principle of less is more.
Less is more. Thank you, Rob. What a great question, Julia. There are a couple of other questions specific around security, data sensitivity. So the first one is from M. Lacey. How do we protect our donor database if we make it available to AI? And then Abby asked a complementary question about how secure is the information you put into Chat GPT? For example, we'd assume we wouldn't put sensitive information about a donor into Chat GPT. So Nathan, can you speak a little bit more about this security piece?
Sure. It's definitely an important area, and it's evolving all the time. I mean, it's actually not true that you shouldn't put information in GPT. It depends on which GPT you're using. And even more so, you're provided options that your data in a new release of ChatGPT, you can actually select for your data not to be sent to OpenAI to be trained. So most enterprise accounts are already like that. The Microsoft accounts will be like that, where they're meant to be, your data is not retraining. But overall, large language models, like, you never want to put anything that is confidential in them if you don't know that it's a closed system. More and more, the common trend is for those systems to be closed within an enterprise environment. I'd ask the question to Felicity also, because I assume with all of your different digital kind of deployments, do you have like a governance policy, or do you tend to do you evaluate your different choices based on security parameters or privacy controls and things like that, or do you just kind of try new things?
Yeah, security is very, very important to GCF, and because we are touching money, we're touching, other people's resources. So it's a good question. For example, we use HubSpot for our digital programs for the most part, but HubSpot is not a native app in Salesforce, and we build a really tight security wall around our Salesforce, which is our primary CRM. So one practice, for example, is we want to make sure, although these two systems are synced to a certain degree, but we don't allow certain data to flow freely between these two systems. So that, right, we partner with our technology team very closely, and we will investigate into the security risk and what will make sure our system's integrity wouldn't be compromised, because we are introducing all these digital apps to our main customer database. And that's why also we are very cautious about using AI tools. And we are one of those organizations that are still investigating into AI tools, although I personally see a lot of potential of incorporating AI tool into our technology stack, but we want to truly understand the security risk before we implement the tool.
Yeah, I figured you'd give a really practical answer to that, which is a perfect answer. And I would say for very small organizations, if you're alone in this and you're wondering, go to a ChatGPT or a Perplexity and say, if I'm going to evaluate whether or not this is, a good tech stack, and if it prioritizes, ask it which questions you should ask a vendor. So you're not alone in this. Ask it what questions, are most important to really make sure that you're prioritizing security and privacy. So it's going to be my answer for everything, I guess, right?
Yeah, I might offer that you may use just out of the box, you may choose to use Chat GPT for content creation, right? It can make it much, much easier. However, when it comes to analyzing your data, you may never use Chat GPT directly, but whether it's Salesforce or Microsoft, I presume Blackbaud, all the leading CRMs are incorporating,
right,
and they have been incorporating AI into their platforms. They're accelerating it, but it's been there for years.
Yeah.
So, for the purposes you're talking about in terms of the segment of one, start with the tools you already have and ask the tools. I mean, I think, Nathan, that this is what you were alluding to. What vendors that I'm already using are using AI in a creative way, or ask your account manager, and you don't have to buy anything new. It's going to be part of it, or you may sometimes say add on, but all the apps we're using in the nonprofit space are going to be incorporating AI in some way. And you already have it in many cases. You'll just have more access to more information to pull in data from the outside and to use your data well, as Felicity was talking about, within the protocols and the data governance policies that you already have in place.
Thank you so much. Well, I know we still have a couple of questions, and as always, the best conversation continues over on our blog and on LinkedIn. So if we didn't get to your question, or if something pops up that you'd love to ask us, Alpha Group, the panelists, go ahead and please share that on LinkedIn. We will absolutely respond to every question and are just so grateful for the input of this group as we figure out how to responsibly and effectively use these tools in an age where the expectations from how we're interacting with nonprofits are really raising and ramping up. So I want to personally thank everyone who attended. Thank you, Naomi, for the nice thank you shout out to everyone. I'm so grateful for our panelists today, Felicity, Rob, Nathan. I've learned so much from each of you. Thank you for leading the sector and sharing your wisdom. With that, Lucinda, I'll turn it over to you for any next steps for our panel.
Yes, thank you. I echo everything that Lieve just laid out. Thank you, Lieve, for moderating this wonderful conversation. Thank you to our panelists, and the time and the expertise and knowledge that you've brought to this conversation is just wonderful and amazing. And thank you to all of the participants for joining and interacting with us through the chat and through questions. This has been recorded, so if you feel like we went really fast or you missed something, you will all receive an email from us within the next day with a link to the recording to this webinar, as well as all of those resources that we've been alluding to and referring to, and the ones that we put in the chat. We're going to collect all of those and send them out to you. So you're going to have the recording and those resources moving forward. As soon as we conclude here in just a minute, everyone is going to be prompted to complete a survey. It's really short. It's about 4 questions. It'll take you a couple of minutes. Please do consider completing the survey. It gives us really good feedback for us to plan future events. And then to Lieve's point, so many questions we didn't get to answer. So if we didn't answer your question, or if more come, we want to continue that conversation. In addition to social media, you can also reach us at info@alford.com. Send us an email there, and we will get back to everyone as promptly as possible. So with that, one last thank you. I hope everyone has a really wonderful day, and we will now disconnect. Thank you all so much. Take care.
Everyone.
Thank you. Bye.